It was just very eerily reminiscent of stories, that I heard from my Bubby and Zadie growing up, who were both survivors of the Holocaust and were able to make it out of Auschwitz alive. It highlighted the sheer rise in anti-Semitism. It was no longer in someone else's backyard.
Welcome to What Came After. I'm your host, Manya Marcus. On What Came After, we'll take a look at the many ways people's lives have changed since the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, 2023. We'll be speaking to people around the world to learn how this profound moment in Jewish and global history continues to shift, shape, and change them. To learn more, please visit us at whatcameafter.com. Hello.
Hello.
I am really honored to be here with Yossi Held. You are the director, if I'm not mistaken.
The executive director.
The executive director for Stand With Us Midwest. I'm going to give you ample opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us what you do here. But we are in your offices outside Chicago, and you met with me on very short notice, which I'm so appreciative of because I can imagine you have a lot going on.
Always. Yes. Happy to be here.
So, well, thank you. Let me ask you to start just by introducing yourself. Tell us where we are and what it is that you do here.
So my name is Yossi Held. I'm the executive director of Stand With Us Midwest. We are in one of the north suburbs of Chicago. Stand With Us is an international education organization that combats anti-Semitism and supports Israel, not just here in North America or the US, but internationally. So we have offices on every continent and in Israel. So that's just a little bit about what we do. I would say the majority of my work obviously is focused in the Midwest, and we deal with people in communities who are experiencing anti-Semitism, who are being bullied, students from middle school, high school, and beyond in college, and not just students, but parents, teachers, anyone really affected by the ever-changing virus that is anti-Semitism. But we also support Israel internationally, and we do that in many different ways. Number one being education. There's a lot of misinformation about Israel, and not just about Israel, but also about what being Jewish is or what being Israeli is. And so we tear down misinformation by just showcasing the actual facts. We believe firmly that the road to peace is through education. It's not a cheesy phrase. It really does enable us to parse out that which people tend to believe, and it's not always true. I mean, it just happens. And with social media, you can take a little kernel of misinformation, and when it goes viral, that becomes what people accept as fact. And not to steal the alternative facts phrase from anyone, but there is a lot of misinformation out in the world. And at Stand With Us, part of our work on a daily basis is really just correcting misinformation.
So I want to emphasize here that it sounds like you really have two major prongs. One is preventative, which is to use education and advocacy to prevent really a lot of the anti-Semitism and all the misinformation that we're seeing right now. And the other one is sort of the word that's coming to my mind is curative. These are acute situations where people are coming to you having experienced anti-Semitism. What kind of service or support do you offer to somebody who's been experiencing bullying or whatever it might be in an anti-Semitic way?
That's a great question. So I would say first off the bat, just being an ear and a conduit for someone's voice to be heard is like the first off the bat thing that we do. Depending on the severity of the issue or the experience that an individual has. So if it's a student and they're a minor and their parents are coming to us with something like egregious that warrants a call to the local authorities, obviously that's what we advise like off the bat. But we have a legal department that takes each individual case seriously. And there are obviously levels. So depending on what has happened to this individual and what age they are. And if it's a high school incident, we have high school managers that focus just on high school age students, and same thing with early education and then campus. But many of the people that come to us are not students. There are teachers, there are people in the community that have noticed something or experienced something acute themselves. And so first we lend an ear, and then we internally look look at how best to treat each individual incident.
So this is, I'm thinking of two things. The first thing is that we talk about this war being a 7-front war, but we also recognize that there's this 8th front, which is sort of the online, internet, and diaspora space in general, right? The non-physically in Israel, the internet, and the diaspora. I don't think anyone really felt prepared for October 7th. That's an understatement, right? We all know this. And yet it sounds like Stand With Us actually had some scaffolding and infrastructure in place prior to any of this that readied you perhaps more than other institutions and organizations were.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So Stand With Us is a 24-year-old organization, and it was founded after the last intifada, specifically to address the misinformation on social media, where one thing happened in Israel, but what you heard in the diaspora was a completely different reality. And that continues today. But what's different today than, say, 24 years ago is that there were no organizations. There was no Stand With Us 25, 26 years ago that was really prepared to counterbalance the misinformation. And our founders really took note of that and created Stand With Us out of literally their living room. And they have created a movement that is being replicated somewhat, but I will keep on mentioning this over and over again. The sheer volume of misinformation and the limited size of the Jewish population, not just in the diaspora, but in Israel, is way outnumbered. And we are always going to be treading water. We do have more levers to pull these days. We have more reach. If you look at our website and our Instagram and our Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, I mean, we are literally on every platform because the misinformation is literally on every platform and things go viral. And we're really just focused on the facts, especially with respect to Israel, Gaza, the Israeli government. We are, a non-political organization, and we steer clear of that and focus really on the facts. And the facts are that the other side, and when I say the other side, I'm not just talking about one individual group, I'm talking about the other side that's perpetuating misinformation. That is their goal. If you look at the playbook for Hamas in particular, it's not just an anti-Israel movement. It's anti-American. It's anti-Western culture. So whenever we see misinformation, especially in social media, we're very quick to flip the script, so to speak. And so our office in Israel is obviously in a different time zone. And so we really are a 24-hour operation when we're asleep here in the US. We have an office in the UK, one in Israel. We have offices in Brazil, one in Australia.
Wow.
So we're literally in every single time zone. And it can be overwhelming, waking up to what seems like an endless stream of bad news. But at the same time, that's not a reason to just sit on your hands and just wait for someone else to pick up the slack for you. We really believe in our mission, which is education, and that really is the roadmap to peace. Not everyone is as receptive as we would like them to be, but we're going to keep on fighting for the truth and for peace.
So I think that I've done a lot of these interviews and I don't hear people talking about peace too often. I think that everyone is just incredibly overwhelmed and
disenfranchised,
disenchanted,
and
dis many things.
Yeah. But when I say peace, I mean peace in the Middle East, peace throughout the world. For me, peace, it also means every student's ability to go to a classroom without fear of being bullied, demonized, literally called demon, and many horrific words that I can't really say.
Right. But I mean, this is what Stand With Us sounds like they're very good at. Zoom in, zoom out, right?
Yeah.
We would love peace in the Middle East. Right now, we would also really like peace in the classroom.
Right. And that's a win. Just having one student come to us and helping them chart a path forward. So when I say education, we are an educational organization. So our early education, high school, and campus staff, program staff, help students become better advocates, not just for fighting misinformation about Israel or Judaism or Zionism or being a Zionist, because that for some reason now is like a horrible word when really it's not. If we could help one student feel comfortable wearing a kippah or their Star of David and not have to hide it, that is a win. But the sheer number of students that we're able to touch throughout the world is really in the hundreds of thousands if you look at our programming. And so whenever I'm dismayed at what I'm seeing in my inbox first thing in the morning. For me anyway, I go back to like, well, what are we doing in this region that the students from? Are they involved in our programming? Did they even know about us until something happened? And then connecting those dots, it's a way of not just growing Stand With Us's reach, but also if that's happening to one student, it's likely happening to dozens more
Who aren't saying
who
anything
aren't
or
saying
don't
anything
have resources, right?
yeah, for fear of persecution, or they're not even wearing their Star of David necklace because they don't want to be bullied like that kid in the other class, or the kid that was bullied yesterday. It's also happening to teachers who aren't necessarily speaking up for fear of persecution or for fear of not getting a promotion. Anti-Semitism does mutate, and it's slightly different today than it was, say, in the 30s and 40s before the Holocaust. Just it takes a different form, but at its root, it's pretty much the same as it's always been. And we just have a lot more tools to not only recognize it, but also like we have the ability to change the narrative, and we have legal tools at our disposal that we really didn't have 100 years ago, let alone, going back through the millennia.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to bring you back to is this point that it's amazing that we have all these tools. It's incredible that you have hundreds of attorneys who are partnering with you. And the sad fact is that it won't be enough, can't be enough. We are so outnumbered. And it's just a terrible reality that this is necessary. I'm sure you guys would like to be able to close your doors and do
Well,
other things at some point because this won't be an issue. But
hey, if we could put me out of a job, I'd be happy retiring from this work anyway, knowing that anti-Semitism is no longer an issue.
right. Well, I think you've got some job security, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Are you able to keep up with the volume?
Yes, but it's harder and harder to do. Part of my job is also working with community partners, continuously growing our pro bono network for, say, our legal department. The need for growth is right now in lockstep with the surge of incidents, and that figure, that 300% plus figure that the ADL put out like recently is a real number. And it's likely not actually taking into account every single incident. It's a sheer level increase year over year, but there are so many people that aren't coming forward. And if everyone came forward that experienced anti-Semitism, I think we would be way overwhelmed. There's also what happened after October 7th is that a lot of community partners, especially in the Jewish anti-Semitism space, had to come together in a way that they never really had to prior, just given the sheer size. So we've partnered with ADL, we've partnered with the Jewish federations, we've partnered with Simon Wiesenthal Center, AJC, literally the alphabet soup of Jewish organizations, some of which overlap a little bit with respect to programming, but none of which can take on the sheer volume of issues, especially here in the US. But really, what's happening in the US is happening in every other Jewish community. And so it really does take those partnerships and working together and helping each other out because we need to. Like the issue at hand, especially with respect to anti-Semitism, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a kippah or not. If someone knows that I'm Jewish, specifically on campus, I would be treated the same. It's just the hatred towards being a Jew is palpable. Going back to just after October 7th, there were a lot of unilateral ceasefire resolution initiatives, not just here in Chicago, but throughout the suburbs and in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, all the Midwest states. And the other side, the talking tracks were all the same. The Zionist colonial people are killing babies and we need a ceasefire. That was like what you saw in newspapers. But if you were actually on the ground, I was called horrible names. I was called a baby killer. They don't know who I am. They just saw that maybe I was wearing a yarmulke or I had Israeli flag on my winter jacket. And so I was identifiable as not being part of the pro-Gaza movement. And you try to talk to these people who are screaming in your face, those situations, it's hard to get through. And that's where you use public policy and advocacy to really move the needle with respect to that.
I want to go back to October 7th itself. You've had a professional journey that's led you to this role. You've also had a personal journey, I think. Can you tell us where you were on October 7th? Set the scene. How was it for you?
Sure. I was at home in Los Angeles with my husband and our dog. And I tend to get up pretty early in the morning. My husband was sleeping. He wasn't feeling well because he was going through some health issues. Obviously, I'll get to that in a little bit. But I picked up my phone and instantly had over 100 texts and WhatsApp messages, specifically from my mom. She's like, I've been trying to reach you. And so even before seeing updates on my phone from news outlets and newspapers, it was really my mother who let me know what was happening. And she was obviously petrified. And first thing I did was I just went online, and it was horrible. Even in Israel, a lot of people didn't know exactly what was happening because it was such a multi-pronged attack. And it was just like the sheer volume, and they came in dozens of places at the same time. And it was scary. It was shocking. As we learned more and more, it just became more horrific. And I was not yet at Stand With Us. So I had been in talks with the folks at Stand With Us at our central office in Los Angeles. But I knew that I was going to be moving back to Chicago to be closer to family because my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And he had had cancer prior, but it wasn't stage 4. And it was coming back very aggressive. So initially, when October 7th happened, there was the grief and the shock, but then also knowing the way in which many of the people were murdered and really executed and in horrific ways, the babies on the kibbutzes, it was just very eerily reminiscent of stories, that I heard from my Bubby and Zadie growing up, who were both survivors of the Holocaust and were able to make it out of Auschwitz alive. I just kept on hearkening back to those memories, but also the feeling of that awful, icky, sick, nauseous feeling that as an adult, I really didn't feel unless I was actually sick, because I never had personally experienced that. But seeing my Bubby tell the stories later on in my life, as she got older and as I got older, she was more free with what actually happened. And just, I could never imagine seeing a sister of mine shot in the head while waiting in line. I can never imagine losing my Bubby and Sadie because they were murdered, or my parents because they were murdered just because they were Jewish. So October 7th, especially for me, and I know it's true for members of my family, but I think it's a shared experience, it really took us back to what our immediate family must have experienced. And it highlighted the issues at hand that a lot of people probably squirreled away as oh, it's not in my backyard. And then what followed when the diaspora on college campuses specifically, and then the sheer rise in anti-Semitism, it was no longer in someone else's backyard. It was in everyone's backyard. And then immediately following, it was kind of like a double whammy because personally, we were dealing with an unknown future with very few options.
You mean vis-a-vis your husband's illness?
Yeah. That was it was probably the most difficult moment in my life and definitely Zach's life. But once we made the move and once I comprehended all the various levers and really tools at my disposal through my work at Stand With Us, it offered some peace. With Zach, he passed away about a year later. Prior to October 7th, there was always an option, another chemotherapy, and he was on a lot of oral medication. He just took one pill a day, and he was in remission for years at a time, and it was always manageable. His disease became unmanageable, and he entered hospice, but he was very lucid and very much the amazing human being that he was up until the very, very end. And so there was some comfort there.
I just want to make sure that our listeners are comprehending the volume of factors that you were having to process on this day. Okay. We talked at the beginning about how we need to make sure as a community that we are at least treading water. And I think on October 7th, it's very clear that we were all drowning. So there's the fact that your mother is in Israel. You're scared for her. She's scared. Your husband, there are no longer treatment options. That's a feeling of unmanageability. And then there's this sense of the enormous volume of work that's facing you. And you have enough experience, we'll talk about that soon, to know that this is going to land in your backyard. Because whatever happens in Israel, is the diaspora is a second behind. It sounds like work was your life raft.
It really was. I really dove into it out of not just necessity, but I'm one of those people that if there's a problem, like I want to try to fix it. And I was very limited in what I could do for Zach outside of being present. But with respect to my work at Stand With Us and all the issues happening on college campuses and elementary schools, high schools, in communities, there were anti-Semitic art installations put up in public buildings in the city of Chicago, and not just here. It was going on multiple fronts in multiple states and cities, villages. I'm one of those people that I'm really either on or off, and I'm usually off when I'm sleeping. I really didn't have a choice. It wasn't just my job at that point. Like throughout my career, I've always been in positions where I've really believed in the mission, and that's why I work in the nonprofit space. My husband, at first, he's like, "Why are you in?" Not like, the disparity between for-profit and nonprofit salaries is a whole other conversation. But when we first met, he's like, why nonprofit?"
Right, right.
And then as he learned more about the organizations that I work for, he's like, "Oh, okay, I get it. I'm not able to really just do like a job just for the salary. It has to be something that I really believe in." October 7th really just drove home everything that I already knew, having Israeli parents, because my father's also originally from Israel. My parents are divorced, but Israel was always a homeland because it really was. It was my father's home. My Savta was alive growing up, and some kids went to summer camp. We usually went to Israel when we were really young.
Now, your Safta, was she the one who survived Auschwitz?
No,
Or
so that's my Bubby and Zadie, who are my maternal grandparents. I'm named after my paternal grandfather, who I never met, but they actually got out right before the Holocaust and ended up living in an internment camp in Cyprus. My Savta and my Saba. My mom's side of the family, like she had aunts and uncles that did make it out, but went to Israel instead of the US. But she had one uncle. And my grandfather also had an uncle who went to the US. And so I have family on my mother's side that's almost as large as my family here in the US, which is amazing. So whenever anything happens in Israel, it's not just, oh, it's the Jewish homeland. It's like, oh, it's my mom's homeland. It's my second cousins and now their kids. When you hear Israeli soldiers falling, is it someone in my family? Is it one of my friends that I went to high school who now lives in Israel? I have tons of friends that made Aliyah and are raising their families there, especially this past 12-day war that we lived through.
Israel and Iran,
Yeah,
yes.
Israel and Iran. It's a pretty harrowing experience, especially for my mother, because her partner has since passed over the last 12 years of her living there. And she loves Israel, but I can't count how many times she had to run to her safe room. And I'm like, "Mom, just move the bed in the safe room." She's like, "It won't fit." I'm like, "Well, I know, take the mattress," because she was going back and forth, and it's a safe room, but it's not 100% safe. And she was on her balcony of the building that she lives in having coffee one morning, and sure enough, an Iron Dome battery went off, and she took a picture of it and sent it to me. I'm like, "Wait, that's in your parking lot." She's like, "Well, it's not my parking lot. It's the next building over's parking lot." I'm like, that's really, really close. And there were several times when I was live with her on FaceTiming on WhatsApp where you heard the booms going off. And so when I say, oh, people don't feel like it's in their backyard, it's very much not the case for me. And the way I feel is replicated by many, many people, especially here in the US and at Stand With Us. And there's over 100 plus staffers throughout the world, but specifically in North America, we all have family and friends that live in Israel. We have an office in Israel. And so whenever anything is happening, I have the app, so I get the red alerts on my phone. It really cuts deep and very close because I know someone in almost every major city in Israel and everywhere in between. It's not that big. I feel like it's smaller than I mean, it is smaller
It's
than
definitely
Illinois.
smaller than
Yeah,
Illinois.
so
Yeah.
it's pretty scary, but it also going back to what we were talking about earlier, doubling down on what you can do and focusing on that, because otherwise you will continuously live in sheer raw emotion, and that's not helpful to anyone. I mean, sure, if something horrible happens, experience those emotions, cry, get it out of your system, do whatever you have to do. Some people cry, some people don't. I was never a crier. Then I started happening. And I'm like, what is going on? And then you get it out of your system and then you go back to what you can do.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I'm sort of looking at you. We're just meeting now for the first time. And I keep thinking, no, you did have a choice. Like you could have just said, I'm not going to work. I'm going to turn my phone off. I'll check in selectively on my people. I don't need to immerse myself in this right now when I'm also caretaking a loved one at the end. But then I'm also thinking, oh, like you're descended of Holocaust survivors and you're from Israelis. And so some level of just going forward,
Yeah.
despite all of it, is in your
It's
bones.
It's in my bones. And especially when Zach entered hospice, that was October 2024. So it was literally
Just
a
1 year.
year after I was at the 1 year anniversary event in the city. It was before our annual gala. And there were all these things happening while Zach was in hospice. And I could have taken that month off because they did tell us it would be like 2 to 4 weeks. And Zach,
That Zach had left.
that he had left, or that's why he entered hospice. And he was a planner himself, meticulous. Everything was in a spreadsheet for work, managed like hundreds of millions of dollars of different marketing plans for different major companies. There was always a plan in place, even with his death. Like we knew what was going to happen week by week, but when you're in the moment, you could either shut down, or for me, I'm not the kind of person that can easily just sit still. I could have, and I didn't because I'm not capable of just sitting in that raw emotional state. But I mean, there was one point where Zach said to me, it was like a week before he passed, he's like, you might regret not having spent more time. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm here every day, because I was able to work from home a lot. But he's like, you might regret it, but I want you to know that I don't regret it because I know you're doing what you love and you have to do it. He always had these ways of really grounding me, and we kind of grounded each other. And so hearing that was probably one of the more important things that I heard during that time frame, because there was a lot of information, like just medical stuff, and also my in-laws, thank God they were at the house. His parents basically moved in. Like if I was on TV for some press conference about something related to work, I always got a text from Zach because he was a prolific texter. He's like, you look really good on TV. I was like, do I? I'm like, I don't even know what I just said. So he was my rock through that. And now I carry that forward, like his energy. He was always working, but he didn't necessarily love the product necessarily, but he loved the strategy and implementing that. And he also loved the mentoring process because he had fairly large teams that he managed. I'm the executive director of the Midwest, but each department within Stand With Us, like our high school department, our campus department, they also are managed by executive directors, and the local staff all filter through different streams and different levels. But with respect to all the work in the Midwest, it's one team, one cohesive team, and we all do work together towards the same goal. And so it's a beautiful partnership, and there's no shortage of opportunities to work together because of just everything that's happening.
Well, when you said beautiful partnership, I wasn't sure if we were talking about the Stand With Us thing or your marriage.
Yeah. Well,
that
I mean,
also sounds like a beautiful partnership.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a family. It's a Stand With Us family, but we do all work together towards the same goals. And so it's a beautiful thing when it's working. When an organization is successful, all the levers of the organization are working in unison. We're efficient, but we're also a family, and we're all experiencing these horrible things together. It's important to be present and cognizant that you are human and this is happening to you too. I'm in a place and I have the tools and the knowledge to take being screamed at and hear horrible things thrown my way. A 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or even a 20-year-old is still formulating their worldview, how they perceive the world, and may not have had the foundation that I had as a kid, knowing that it's an amazing thing to be Jewish. It's an amazing thing to be a Zionist. I'm not an observant Jew, so I don't wear my kippah every day, but I used to. And every now and then I just throw it on because I live in the community, and, out of respect, I wear a hat or a yarmulke, and I'm not afraid to, knowing all the horrible things that could happen and that do happen. But not every kid or student has that foundation or that knowledge.
In our preliminary conversation before we did the interview, you shared with me a story about being on campus at UCLA prior to October 7th. And in a moment, we're going to pivot to the future after October 7th. But I just want to ask you about that particular anecdote because it sounds like you were aware in a way that some people weren't, that anti-Semitism never went away. It was brewing. So if you could just share that with us, it would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So I worked at UCLA, and this was, I mean, gosh, this is going back 8 years now. I remember it was early on when I first started working at UCLA. Like, I ran into one of my colleagues who I knew was Israeli just by their name. I just introduced myself, in Hebrew, and I was very politely told in not so many words that, oh, we just don't talk in Hebrew.
Meaning like on campus.
Like on campus at the office, just in English. And instead of responding in Hebrew, like, he responded to me in English. And then I found out there were other reasons for that other than sheer preference. For whatever the reason was, it made me feel very uncomfortable in a way that I'd never, as an adult, experienced before. My name is Yossi. So if you put two and two together, it's very easy to draw a line straight to Israel or Judaism. I never really experienced anti-Semitism knowingly. I rarely was called names for wearing a kippah when I was a kid, except for once or twice. Even in college myself, I didn't really experience anti-Semitism, but it wasn't until I was working at UCLA where I was told not to talk in Hebrew. And my Hebrew, I would say I'm proficient-ish. Conversational, like, hey, my name is Yossi in Hebrew, 3 words. Hashem Shali was not okay. And that's not okay. There are French professors and people speaking different languages all the time. But I didn't get into it then because I just started and I didn't want to like ruffle any feathers or stir the pot. I squirreled it away in my head, but I never forgot it. And I never felt like it was okay. I should have been able to like talk in Hebrew. And looking back, it made me feel like, why didn't I? It made me think of all the students that aren't coming forward with things that they heard or saw because they don't want to be known as that kid or that student or that employee that is causing trouble. And it's perceived as, oh, it's just a little thing. It's not a big deal. But little things become big things if they aren't addressed. And that's something I know now. That's something that we teach and educate at Stand With Us. And so I feel like it was an eye-opener for me, and it definitely led me to the work that I'm doing now. And so I'm in a sense grateful for that experience. And I hope it's not happening to anyone else now. And if it is, and
Reach
you hear,
out.
yeah, reach out if you hear this.
We're going
and
to plug you.
yeah, because it's subtle, but it can snowball into something horrible. And it often does if left unaddressed.
Well, now we see that. My father isn't Jewish, and I made a trip to Israel with him. And I understood when we were in Israel together that Israel belongs to a lot of people. Israel had a place for you growing up observant, which I know you did. It has a meaning religiously. It has a cultural meaning. It has a historical meaning. And so I want to bring you to an opportunity to speak about your trip with Zach, which probably colored Israel in a different way than you were used to. And to sort of share that with us, because mostly we speak to Jews who've been to Israel and we don't hear other perspectives.
It was by far one of our favorite trips. It was definitely one of my favorite trips with Zach, but I learned later that it was also one of his favorites, which was very comforting. He, at that point, already had an affinity for Israel, just hearing all the stories and seeing pictures and knowing and learning more from both my parents and my mom before October 7th. She used to come a couple times a year to the States. And so everything was about Israel whenever she came. Oh, this is so much better in Israel, or everything's better in Israel. Like, oh, the hummus is good here, but oh my gosh, in Israel at this one place. So we pretty much did everything except a lot when we were there. But the time that we spent in Jerusalem in particular, I had never really gone to the Christian Quarter before. And Zach had not been to anywhere in the Old City because he had never been there before. And I hired a tour guide to take us through the various quarters of the city. And it was a learning experience for Zach, but it was also a learning experience for me. Like I saw a side of Israel that I had never seen before, like the Sea of Galilee. The Kinneret is the Kinneret, but it's also the Sea of Galilee. And so part of what I've always loved about Israel is it's like walking through history, literally and figuratively. And I was able to walk and see Israel through a different light. And everything was new to Zach, but also he grew up Catholic and his parents are very observant and they go to church every Sunday. And the Psalms and the stories, they do intersect, especially in Israel. Like all roads kind of hearken or lead back to Israel. And so it was a learning experience for both of us. And also the food is better there. Like,
Look, the dairy and the produce, there's no question.
Yeah. And well, also, it's interesting. Like, so because he had intestinal cancer, for whatever reason, he couldn't really eat dairy. So, being the good Jewish boy that I am, it's very easy to get Parv food
Right.
in Israel. I mean, there's every single religion, but a large portion of the population keeps kosher. And so going out to eat was so easy for him there. And it was so nice to see.
Right. So if it's not a dairy restaurant, you will not find dairy in that establishment.
Exactly. So he could eat anything on the menu. He didn't
Right.
even, like in the States, whenever we go out, he'd have to ask if there was dairy in this or dairy in that. I love meat. I can have fleishik for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We often went to restaurants that were just kosher and had meat, and he could eat anything. So that was not the only reason why he loved the trip, but like I felt safe there for him. And like I think it's very true for many people that go to Israel, especially as Jews. It's the one place on the planet where I've always felt safe, even though people are like, oh my God, there's always a war or something. Yeah, there's always something happening in the US too. But in the US, I often am like, oh, should I wear a kippah here? In Israel, I don't have those questions, like I feel really at home. And I know that Zach felt at home too. And it wasn't just because he was my husband. Like he actually felt at home there. And he's like, I get it. I get why they fight over this land. When he first met me, he's like, why are they fighting over the sand and the desert?
Right.
Like literally, I think he said that to me once. I mean, jokingly, but he did not understand, like,
why is it worth all this?
yeah.
Right.
And as the years went by, and especially that was codified or solidified when we were in Israel, like it finally like clicked and everything came together. So I'm just sad that we didn't get to go back.
What was it like for you to be in the Christian Quarter?
It was really interesting. Like I'd never been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We did the walk that Jesus did through the city. I'd never even been to the Christian Quarter, honestly. And I lived in Jerusalem. I did a gap year. So I was always in the old city and I just never went. And so the tour guide that we had educated us on each individual area. There was some prayer that Zach was offered to say, and he's like, I don't need to do that. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But he ended up doing it and I recorded it. And you just reminded me that I should probably send that to his parents. They would definitely love to see that now. Yeah. And it was a new way of seeing Israel, that it's not just the homeland for Israelis and like
And
the Jewish
Jews,
diaspora.
right.
It's a homeland for everyone. And I think about that a lot, especially in my work. People are like, oh, well, it's just for the Jews. I'm like, no, it's a homeland for everyone. Everyone's welcome to go to Israel as long as you're not trying to blow it up.
Right. That's key.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the trip really broadened Israel for you in an
It
important
did.
way.
Yeah, it really did. And it had been a while since I had been back because my mom, she made Aliyah, but like she kept on coming every year, once or twice a year. And so I was like, I'm not necessarily going to go to Israel this year because you're here. But Zach really wanted to go. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
I'm so glad you guys did.
Yeah, it was great.
Let me ask you just one more thing.
Sure.
The concept of this season is that Americans are afraid. Do you agree that there has been a rise in fear among American Jews since October 7th? And what is it that you would say to them now?
I 100% agree that many American Jews are more fearful, especially after October 7th, but still today are more fearful of what it means to be Jewish and American, just given the rise of anti-Semitism. It's a real feeling. And when you see kids that are being bullied and you hear these stories, when, Yaron and Sarah are gunned down in front of a museum in DC, just because they work at the Israeli embassy. When you hear that and see that, there's no way that you cannot be fearful for your own life or the lives of your family and your children. It is palpable. It is a shared feeling by many that it's happening, but it's happening concurrently with a movement that's trying to address it, is addressing it, and you're not alone. Even if you live in a very remote city in the US and where there aren't very many Jews, organizations like Stand With Us and all the other alphabet soup organizations that we partner with are just steps away. We're a phone call away, we're an email away. It's important to be cognizant of that feeling of fear, but also knowing that A, you're not alone. B, there are organizations and people willing to help you navigate what is often a very scary landscape to be living in. There's legal recourse, there are organizational touch points and communities that are there for you. You just have to reach out, call us, email us, educate yourself. And people are naturally afraid when something horrible happens, but knowing what is available to you is also part of solving that problem. But it's also important to like really feel those feelings because it is a scary time. It is scary when you hear about two young professionals being murdered that were just about to get married. It's horrible. But that doesn't mean that we should shut down and not continue to do the work or the work of the Israeli embassy. I was in DC at the Israeli embassy a couple weeks before that shooting happened, and I was with this delegation of students, all of whom experienced some form of anti-Semitism at Northwestern University. And part of the trip was to meet with members of Congress on the Hill. The first place we went to was the Israeli embassy. And I'm pretty sure they were both there. And being fearful, yes, of course, that's a natural reaction. But like knowing that our work must continue is equally important.
Thank you so much
Oh my gosh, my
for
pleasure.
sitting with me. This was a really valuable hour or however long we've been here. And you took the time, and I know you don't have a lot of it. So really, thank you again.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to What Came After wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at whatcameafter.com.
Early morning river rain, dusting off my window pane. Keeper of a million mountain songs that dance out in the fields of grain. Bold and heavy harvest moon, sacred is your harvest tone. Keeper of a million thunder songs that rattle when the blossoms bloom. And up the river wind blows loud, happy as the seasons turn. We're both a little older now. Hey, Golden Valley River sun, Mother Nature's hope.